On today's show, we'll be talking about careers and mental wellness with Carol Ann Wentworth. Carol Ann, first-in-class executive recruiter, returns to Unlocked to decode today's job market with practical guidance for those starting out or navigating transitions. Careers are at a crossroad, and there is a key to unlocking navigation. Stay tuned and find out what, why, and how. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Madeline Blair, and this is Unlocked, a show all about unlocking the resilient leader in you. Today, I'm going to do things a little differently. I'm going to introduce my guest immediately before we get into the topic. So I'm going to bring her right on. Carol Ann Wentworth, welcome to Unlocked.
Hi, Madeline. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. Listen, my guest today appeared on Unlocked in 2022. So much has happened since that time that I am thrilled to have you back to talk about a topic that just about everyone is concerned about. Carol Ann Wentworth began her career as founder and CEO of Carol Ann International Modeling and Talent. She is also the former CEO of the Sausalito and Woodland Hills Chambers of Commerce. And today she is CEO of Wentworth Executive Recruiting and co-author of A Mindful Career. She is the advisory board. She is on the advisory board of the Samaha. Is that how you pronounce it?
It's State of the World Forum.
State of the World Forum. I love it. And she's a member of the National Women in Construction of all things. Women in Clean Technology, the Commonwealth Club, Climate One, the Blue Book Network, Young Professional in Energy, and more. And before we return to our topic, she was the Person of the Year 2013 of the North Bay Networking Group. And last but not least, she knows how to encourage others to be their best. Spoken as a recipient of that encouragement. Carol Ann, once again, welcome to Unlocked.
Thank you so much for having me back, Madeline. It's good to be here. And today's topic about mental well-being is so critical, not only in the workplace, but in our personal lives. And again, needed some key pieces.
Okay. Well, the U.S. job growth in 2025 was revised down to 181,000 total jobs added, far below earlier estimates. Layoffs and hiring freezes remain widespread. Washington Post just laid off more than 300 journalists, representing roughly a third of the workforce. Forbes reports, quote, artificial intelligence is expected to fundamentally transform the global workforce by 2050, according to reports from PwC, McKinsey, and the World Economic Forum. Job security strongly correlates with engagement. Workers confident in stability are 51% more motivated, yet 93% of workers report remaining in jobs they don't enjoy due to financial and market certainty. Carol Ann, is this the employment environment that you also see?
Yes, I do, Madeline. And I'm based out of San Francisco. And so I've worked not only in the tech vertical, but when we say construction, it's the commercial construction. My clients are builders of the beautiful sky rises and tenant improvement in beautiful, beautiful historic buildings. Having said that, yes, there is a huge energy happening around between the layoffs, between the uncertainty. And what I saw last year personally with our clients was, especially the builders, the tariffs hurt the builders. It hurt the vendors that needed to get the steel for project. It hurt a lot of the, supplies they needed. And so they did not hire last year. In fact, several of my searches out of the gate last year were put on hold, and we were just re-engaged with them about 2 weeks ago. And so the overall landscape, I would have to say, is definitely being affected by the political landscape. And then how do you navigate that in a job that maybe you're uncertain about if you might be getting laid off, and maybe you want to move? Is it a good time to look at a new career? And then finally, if you're unhappy, how does that affect your mental well-being and your production, your value added in your position? So yeah, a lot of issues.
Ugh, darn, I was hoping that you'd come through with something different, knowing that you probably wouldn't. But I can always hope. Well, before we get into the nuts and bolts, what are the factors that a person looking for a job really should be considering? I mean, is it different for those who are joining the workforce for the first time and those who've already developed a career? Just give us some background on that.
Oh, very good. Thank you, Madeline. It's interesting because I actually just wrote a post about this, coming from the mindset of an employer and then meeting with the employee. And I want to start, first of all, by talking about the employer. And so when you're looking for a new career, and maybe you are new in the job market, things that really need to be considered is the opportunity. And what I mean by that is the beautiful offices, the people that you could work with that will mentor you, the nice compensation that could be there with a competitive base plus a bonus plus still 401k exists, plus the opportunity to get to develop your skill in your craft. In fact, Eric and I actually were just guest speakers a week ago today at UCSF. We were brought in to speak to a graduating class that will be on their new career journey in May. And they brought up that fear, on will I be able to get a job in advertising, or what does it look like? So I shared with them this mindset and this perspective because I said, your energy that you bring to the conversation is what's going to stand out to an employee. And if you're curious and not just looking for a job to pay the bills, if you have a growth mindset and you can come in for that interview and say, Madeline, give me an idea on what a day in the life of this office would look like. Let me meet some of the people. I've really encouraged people to be proactive and not to be afraid at all, because that fear also is picked up by the employee. And therefore, if you come out with, of course, good questions as you go into the interview. Now, what I just kind of laid the groundwork on what it looks like from an employee standpoint, because my husband and I, we've hired over 200 people in our lifetime with businesses. And so I know the skin in the game that an employer will have for that new person. Now, when I look at the people that are looking for the careers, also be mindful not to demand hybrid, because that is the biggest issue right now. I am hearing with all my clients, they want people in the office. They want to get to know them. They want to be able to have them collaborate with the managers and not just be a cog in the wheel, maybe doing data analysis, right? They want to really get to know them. And that will also set you up for success when an employer can see you going above and beyond. They're going to start thinking about you differently. And maybe in 6 months, move you into a different position, more responsibilities, right? I mean, it's the way you and I came up. Do you remember those days?
I do.
Oh, Madeline, I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on that. If you've heard to share.
I agree with you that it is easier to assess a person when they are face to face with you. where you can observe not just what they're doing, but how they work with others, because cooperation among team members is so important for real productivity. Uh, but I find myself also working with many people who are remote. And I find that management a little more challenging because I have to work a little harder to specify what I want from them. And when I don't do that, I don't get good results. But I've recognized that it's my problem and not theirs. So yeah, I'm with you. It's easier to have them in the office.
Well, and the clients that we work with here in the Bay Area, one global renewable energy that we've worked with, we've been very blessed to have 48 placements with them in 10 years. We started with their C-level projects and then helped them build their team because we got to know the culture. And so when I would talk with someone and I could feel their passion about a particular project or how they built, the technology for solar projects, it just comes to life, and you pick up on that energy. And so clients want that. Clients want you to be there for so much more than micromanage. And I think that what happened during COVID, we saw it, and it's interesting. Like you said, I can't believe it's been over 4 years that we were together, but so much happened because COVID also taught people how to work from home. Now, those of us that are responsible and that show up on time on a Zoom call and bring your A game to the Zoom call, those people have also taught the companies that it can be done. And I have to have this conversation with my employees all the time because two of the, or clients, I should say, that we're doing 2 big searches right now. And I'm running into the fact, and these are $150,000 to $250,000 positions. So they're paid very well. An amazing company. I love this commercial client. And the point is that I'm finding the people, but the pushback is, Carol Ann, I've learned how to work 3 days in the office, 2 days at home. Can you go back and negotiate for me? And so, it's a tough one because I want to honor where the talent is at and people that are, like you said, might be looking at a promotion or want to change. But I also have to bring back to them how the client has the skin in the game, that they wouldn't even have this conversation if it wasn't for these opportunities, right? So then I have to bring it back to the candidate and say, where's your growth mindset? Mm-hmm. What are you feeling? What is the challenges you're at right now and why you're even looking? I really become a therapist because I don't want to just put a warm body in a new position if it's not beneficial to my client or to that person for personal growth and mental well-being.
Wow. Now, speaking of mental well-being, you speak of mental well-being, but how is it that you define it? I mean, talk about this a bit more, and how can a person do something about their own mental well-being? I see that chart behind you, and I think that chart is really the cover of your new book, right?
Yes. We actually do have a new one coming out called A Mindful Workplace. And we've been doing the research over the last several years, especially due to COVID and the whole mental well-being phenomena that's happening. So as I see it in the workplace, what is showing up in conversations for me is, number one, people have learned how to work differently, and they've adjusted their schedules and their mindset that way. So that's one piece of it. The second is like flexibility. So if they've been at home and now they can take their child to the doctor's appointment, or they can throw a load of laundry in the, in the washing machine while they're doing a call, those little perks do mean a lot to them. And so the other piece too is the Oh, I had a gentleman the other day said, well, since I've been hybrid, I like to work out. I love getting to the gym. Now I have that ability.
Yeah.
And that to me is very important because I believe I have a methodology I've taught for 30 years, mind, body, soul connection. And when those three pillars are aligned, we show up better for everybody, for our employee, for ourselves, for our family. And it's not new age, but it's a commitment and consistency to our own well-being, you know.
You say it's not new age. It's been around for eons. I mean,
Yes.
this is how this human body was created. Yeah.
Yeah, and we come from that way of knowingness, but you'd be amazed, Madeline, how a lot of research I've been doing and reading, and of course, LinkedIn is great for that to give us information, but saying how people or the hustle, or it used to drive me nuts here in Silicon Valley, the saying of fail fast, fail forward. And I would be so not in alignment with that because I would think, why would you put all that energy into something thinking you're going to fail? My intention is if I'm going to put all the energy into building my business like we have in 10 years, I'm going to make sure I don't fail. And so does that mean working out more? Does it mean pausing? Does it mean taking that breath, stepping back, then to look at the whole picture or situation I'm dealing with to find a new solution or a new path forward? And so I think that's the other part of the mindset that I've seen. It's almost been with social media, you see all these little clips of doing it so different. And in reality, I came up old school. And it's pretty basic to me, how you show up. And I see the pendulum actually swinging back that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a good thing. So, yeah, there's a lot of moving parts today. And it really, for me, comes back to taking that pause, taking the breath. And we all have to do something. So let's show up our best self to be that something.
Well, I'm curious. Is there a difference when I step into the office in terms of what I should do? Because we really live multiple lives.
Yes.
We have our business, we have our family, we also have friends. There's just a lot of worlds that we step into and out of. I wonder if you talk about this mental well-being in relationship to these things, because I'll tell you my bias. My bias is that you should not be radically different between home and family and business. But that's me.
I'm with you. No, Madeline, it comes down to authenticity. It really does, and level of integrity. And today, more than ever, we can all find out anything we want to about each other online, Google, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, X, whatever, TikTok. Everything is out there today. So you've really hit on a wonderful topic for me, because it's interesting when I do meet with new people and they're like, how long have you done this? And I said, well, over 35 years, because I love connecting good people and possibilities. And I've been able to weave that love, my passion, into a variety of positions I've had in leadership, because I've been authentic, because I'm genuine. There's no spin here. If I give you my word, I'm going to deliver. And if I give you a handshake, that to me is golden. And it's how I was raised back in the Midwest. Now, how it's showing up, and I think that's where people get uncomfortable, because, and I actually talked about this to the college students. I said, you really need to be mindful of what you're putting out there on social media, because I said, if you are getting drunk every weekend with your friends and partying, and that's what they see, and all of a sudden you call in sick Monday, it's kind of obvious why you're not there. And that's costing the client if you're not there to maybe do a project with that person you're partnering on. Or in the building space, it is a well-oiled machine. You have your project coordinators and then your project engineers and project managers. And if one person is missing on any given day, that's information to move that project forward. So, you know what, I think right now, and I am going to touch on this a little bit because it's how I have lived my life and how I do my business.
Mhm.
But when I talk about mind, body, soul, soul is really about spirit. Soul is really about who you are and your passion for what you do. And so when you ask, how do you bring that into the work or with your friends, much like you, Madeline, this is who I am every day. And I love to bake. And so all my friends that know me, and even we just had a big gathering here the other day with some luminaries and a friend of mine that she's a global humanitarian. So she reached out and asked if I could host a brunch, and I did, for two of these beautiful young girls that came over from India that are going to have some surgeries that need to be done. And you know what, as I sat there and I listened to their stories and how authentic and human, and their passion is simply to show up their best self. And they're both attorneys. One was 34 and one 32, and they grew up in an orphanage. They had actually been rescued off a mountain from Lama Tenzin, where young girls in this area of India, they have a different culture. I'll leave it at that. And if you're broken, as they say, when you're born, parents will take their children up there and leave them there to die. And so the reason why I'm so passionate on this particular organization, Partnerships for Change, is my girlfriend has worked with the Dalai Lama for over 40 years and helped fund this program. And today there's 150 girls that have gone through it, and they all are doing humanitarian work to help other young people. So when I hear someone in the United States start to be demanding, I always say, let's pause. Let's look at the bigger picture and see what this opportunity is going to give you in the long term. You know, is it going to grow your mindset? Is it going to grow the skills? Are you going to meet your love of your life at this place, right? I mean, everything about working with people, it develops your communication skills. And if you're a good listener, you never know. There's always other possibilities. And so I know I kind of gave a little more there, Madeline, but I just really believe that your soul today, I'm having a lot of people coming to me that say, I'm just not happy where I'm at. And then I work with them on that piece, because when we can identify really the underlying, if it's trauma or if it's I think people just want to be heard.
No question. No question. I used to do a lot of research with organizations, particularly in cultural stuff. And one of the key things was if a person was treated with respect. So I would always ask people, how do you know that you have been treated with respect? I mean, just think about an example of that. And invariably, some variation came back to me. They heard what I said. They didn't have to agree with me, but they took it into account.
And they know they mattered.
Correct.
That their presence there, that they mattered.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. And it's so true. Today more than ever, you know, with all the political things we're going through, and that's, you know, a whole nother topic. But when I visit with people, I say, if you're grounded in your authenticity of who you are, you can show up then at work with that bright sunshine. And then I had someone say, well, I don't want to drive an hour to work. And unfortunately, when we live in big cities like we do, that's reality. And so I say, listen to podcasts like Madeline, turn on Spotify. And my goodness, there is I actually send a list of podcasts too, candidates I'm working with. I said, books on tape. I said, my husband, I drove an hour and a half before I started my own firm up to a company up past Sebastopol. Now the drive was beautiful, all the mountains and the fields. So for that, I was grateful. But I too sat in that car, but I made my time. Actually, it was kind of nice because I figured not going to answer the phone. I don't have anybody asking me to do anything. I can listen. And I read more books that way. And it was wonderful. So I think, again, if you can shift your mindset to how can I spoil myself, and be good to me.
Oh, that's an interesting term. How can I spoil myself? Boy, there's a lot of guilt around that, isn't there? In our culture.
Yeah. Definitely. And isn't it funny? We have access to so many possibilities to learn and to level up our a skill set. Eric and I, we just finished a 21-day course on AI with Coursive, and it was fascinating. They were just little sound bites, but I said to Eric, I want to be aware. So if I'm visiting with a candidate and they ask me about Grok or, Gemini or whatever, Claude, exactly. I can at least sound intelligent enough to know, and then I'll, be able to have them tell me more. But it really comes down to, I find when I quiet my mind and I want to level up whatever I'm learning, there is so many vehicles for it. And so you just need to be curious and not get stuck in a thought loop of negative or sadness, if you will, that, I've got to drive an hour and 15 minutes in traffic. Instead, go, wow, I get an hour and 15 minutes to myself where I can enjoy this latte, this coffee, and I can listen now to this. Andrew Huberman is one of our favorite. He's a he's a gentleman actually from Stanford, and he started his podcast a few years ago, and our son Jack introduced us. And so when we do our trips up to Bend, Oregon, we have him on, and I've learned so much about seed oils and, health things that, like, I'm really proud to say I turned 68 in May. And and my doctor, I had my big physical here a few weeks ago, and they're like, Carol Ann, whatever you're doing, please keep doing, because you're aging out here like at 52. Your health is remarkable. But I've also been very mindful of my choices and how that affects. And so anything I can learn and tweak, because it gets different as we get older. Things don't exercise off as fast as they used to. And just by choice, I just choose not to drink. It's not a religious thing. I just really am into the water and AG1 and a lot of health things because I simply want to feel good.
That's right.
Be there. Yeah.
Well, I have Chris Palmer coming on to the show, actually right after you. And of course, he wrote the book, Achieving a Good Death, and the message throughout. Now, he may disagree with me, but as I'm reading his book, it's very clear that to have a good death, you better live a good life so that you're healthy up to the end. So you can control it.
Love that. Love that. That's true.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's all.
I want to come back to your constant. Let me say that differently. You have said over and over again about learning. And I'm really happy to hear that, because when I look at the current situation and the impending AI displacement of many jobs, it's the person who is actively learning that has a possibility to move into other work or other jobs or other things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Madeline, thank you for bringing that to the forefront, because I do encourage everyone that's listening to this to get out ahead of it. Start studying the things on YouTube. So if you are a data analyst at a company, find out how AI will support that conversation for you. So that there again, your managers or the CEO will see that. It was fascinating when we had this gentleman here the other day at our home, and we were talking about AI, and he said, "Are you afraid it's going to replace you as a recruiter?" And I said, "No." I said, "Actually not." I said, because the human element of what I do, at the end of the day, you still have to talk to the people to find out if there's enough there. Now, can AI help me, find profiles a little quicker? Absolutely. But AI itself does not know that my client wants their people to be a half hour from the office, or they need to speak 3 languages because they're going to be doing international work on a renewable energy project in, wherever, Europe or, and so those are the things that I'm blessed to do and know and can find out, right? So AI, I tell people, please embrace it, learn about it. I think it's when we have fear around something, that will only attract more fear. That will also show up in the way you show up at work.
Yeah. You know what? I want to come back to that aspect of mental wellness. I know that you and Eric, by the way, is Carol Ann's husband. We've been talking about him.
Yeah, my guy.
You actually teach around this topic. What are some of the strategies that you suggest to people so that they can actually begin themselves to assess where they are and maybe even improve it?
Excellent. Well, the very first thing I would recommend is to become familiar with Chat GPT-5. That's like if entry level into AI, and we use it, and it is fascinating. And then the YouTubes out there. There isn't anything, and our younger son actually taught us this, who's not younger, he's 26 and has an amazing startup and is just doing great. But when he lived here, we would always have tech questions. And I'd be like, "Jack," and he'd like, "Mom, YouTube, go to," and he taught us that there was so many good people on YouTube showing you how to do AI. And that's free. So it's kind of like, there really is no excuse other than your own maybe thought loop that you have going, that I can't do this, or it's too much. It really isn't. Depending on your situation, again, I want to honor whatever somebody may be going through. But for me, if you can shift that thought process to say that it's going to be okay, and start programming your mind that you're going to get out ahead of it, and there are resources there for all of us. It's just doing the investigative work. And that's probably actually why I love what I do, because I love doing research. I'm always reading a new book or doing something because I'm curious. Yeah.
Yeah. Curiosity is one of the characteristics that I noticed when I did research on resilient people. The highly resilient people are insatiably curious. And it comes back to this aspect of learning. It's just part of your nature. And I like that. In fact, I was surprised with your response when you said go to ChatGPT to get information. Not that I disagree, but as an interesting first step, get yourself informed around a particular area. Yeah, very nice. Well, in your work, you wrote something called Life with Grace. And I just thought, oh, I have to ask Carol Ann, what do you mean by life with grace? And and as you're talking about that, I want you to come to the point where if you could only give a few things to my audience. And by the way, I have an incredibly loyal audience. I mean, I just love them to pieces because they're always there. And this has been going on for many years. And so I really appreciate it. So any thoughts you have on that as to how you can help them understand that?
Oh, Madeline, I often wonder if it comes with age. Wisdom and grace go hand in hand. And what I would like to say is over my career, I have been so blessed to have mentors show up when I needed them. And that saying where they say, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And I really have been blessed. That was one thing, one of my mantras has always been, I've had an amazing career. Even if there were some shifts, I learned from those situations. I would learn what I didn't want, right? Like if I had to take a job versus a career. And so what I literally spent last year when it was a little more quiet on the executive search front, due to many circumstances that were out of my control, I finished writing a course that we will be launching here at the end of March. And it's called Mindful Career Mastery, Unlocking the Code, Mind, Body, Soul. And I talk about grace and how it showed up for me. And that is when things shift in your life that you cannot control. And I'll make this soundbite short, but it's very profound because it happened to Eric and I. And that was in 2008. We had a coffee house for 4 years. My husband really wanted to do one. He's a few years older than me. And he said, honey, let's build this beautiful one. It was in Sausalito on the Bay, and it was magnificent. We met people from all over the world. And at the time, I was the CEO at the chamber. Well, we all know what 2008 hit, and it was the Great Recession. And we lost our business. We lost our home. We had cars repossessed in the night. We had every materialistic thing taken. But it wasn't only me. It was a lot of our neighbors. It was friends, people divorced. I mean, a lot of heartache. Mm-hmm. But I knew in that moment, as we were going through it, I could either be bitter or better. And I was raised to really always look at the bright side of things. No matter what you're going through, there is always going to be a nugget there. And at the time, so first of all, yes, I was upset. The pain was great. It was real. But we also had our little son, Jack, at the time. He was only 7. And I knew that I had to be strong for him. And so I don't mind sharing that story, because then people will say, how did you come through it? And this is where, when I wrote my course last year and finalized it, I want people to know that we're all going through something. Yes. Everybody has an it. And it can be a divorce. It could be a loss of a parent, a loss of a child. It could be loss of a home. Right now, the world is in a very, I say entertaining way, because that keeps me from getting sad about kind of situations. But what I choose every day when I get up is I take time to meditate. I'll literally set up my, dining table with my journal. And Madeline, I will take 15 minutes to write gratitude, everything I'm grateful for, everything I appreciate. And I can tell you, in those 15 minutes, my energy level comes to a place that there's not anything I can't do. And believe me, we've had some real challenges last year. And my husband teases me all the time because he goes, oh, great guru of you, Now what? And I say, Eric, I said, let's just pause. Let's take a deep breath, just really get grounded in that moment. And and it always works out. Sometimes it works out so much better. And if anyone would have told me, 10 years ago that we would have one of the most sought after executive search firms in the Bay Area that specializes, in a few verticals with a mindful approach, when you're going through it, you don't see it. You don't know how you're going to get there. But the one thing I did know about myself, Madeline, is I'm just not attached to stuff because it can all go that. And I saw it happen. And do I like nice? Yes, I like comfortable, but it's not extreme. So I think in terms of living with grace, for me, my most important thing I know I can control is my health. And if I do the right things every day for my mental well-being and doing some stretch, or I've learned Tai Chi last year, which was so much fun. I thought I could do that because I can no longer lift a lot of the heavy weights I used to. But I just looked at it differently. And because this also was the year, I said to Eric, I'm calling it my next level year. Not leveling up, not resetting. It's the next level. It's the next level of wisdom, next level of books, friends, things I get to do, projects I get to do. But it really, at the end of the day, we are the only ones that can navigate our own ship, right? Yeah.
I'm thrilled with what you have said, because we often think of that word grace as somehow coming out of the ethers. Well, what you're saying to me is, if I attend to gratitude, if I attend to being aware of where I am and what I have, then in a way you are creating that grace.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Matt. And I'm with you. I used to think it was some kind of mystical thing or somebody else had it. Like, how did they get that? And it really, at times I tell Eric, if we had to go through that, it actually made our marriage stronger, where a lot of people blamed each other when that we couldn't control. It was what it was. But, the funny thing is it came back 10 times better than I could have ever dreamed. And so,
because in every moment you were seeing, what is it that I can learn?
Yeah. Yeah. And because of it, our son Jack today, when he launched his own company 3 years ago, he knew he wanted to be an entrepreneur. And he's actually told my husband and I, he goes, Mom and Dad, you stayed together. You never yelled at each other. You didn't drink or smoke and do drugs like a lot of other parents. Well, everybody deals with it differently. So please know, I have no judgment on anyone. The only thing I would love to give people is that knowingness that it does start right from you. It is, you have a choice every single day. And, it really, I just wish I could give everyone like a little bottle of magic dust to say, it's gonna be okay, and come into this way of thinking, because it's a journey, right? And and it shifts on us daily, hourly, but it can shift for the better. And that would be the piece I would love to say to people, because one of my absolute favorite sayings, I have it on my wall here, is when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And that was by Dr. Wayne Dyer. And he was one of my mentors, although I never had the blessing of meeting him. I have one of his greatest books, which is about intentions. what is your intention, even on looking for like a new job? If it's just strictly for money, you can find a job. But if your intention is a career where you can grow and learn, that's a different energy totally. And the right one will show up when you're ready. It always does. And today I really encourage people, if they're unhappy where they might be, don't get stuck in that thought loop, but rather shift that mindset and energy to look at it with that curious mindset, and then do like I always call it the inventory of the mind, the pro con list, and it will always show up if you're authentic with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And the monkey mind, which chatters away, saying maybe you shouldn't, or all that's a whole nother conversation.
Definitely.
We each have the ability to learn this methodology. And I just wish for everyone that they take time to pause, take that breath, and then just say it. It's going to be okay. Everything's working out for me.
Yeah. Well, there was a woman in, I want to say it was the 12th century or the 13th century. Her name was Julian of Norwich. And she said, and all will be well, and all will be well, and all will be made well. That's my mantra.
That's wonderful, Madeline.
Yeah.
And you know, if I can leave a nugget, if you can stay present enough in your own body to know that it's a choice, definitely to breathe, definitely to pause, and then say, everything's working out for me, or all is well, like you said.
Yeah.
To attract more good.
Well, Carol Ann, I really want to thank you so much. And I have to say one more thing, which is I'm so delighted that you spoke so lovingly around learning and curiosity, and about knowing who you are, because those are the characteristics of highly resilient people. So yes, what I love about it is that there are so many simple things we can do for ourselves that have enormous numbers of benefits. So once again, Carol Ann Wentworth, thank you.
Thank you. So grateful to be with you today. And to everyone listening, I just wish you an amazing 2026.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Every now and then, there is something that changes how I think about the world. Grounds for Thought is a place where I talk about these moments so that you can explore the meaning for yourself.
Pause, practice, and patience. A set of keys. Have you ever felt that you didn't have even 1 minute as you raced through your to-do list? You check off one item and you're already into the next. Because of the pace of life today, we sometimes believe there is no time between actions or events in our lives, that when we finish, say, an email, we've got to go on to the next one. When we finish the project, we've got to move on to the next one. And when we strike off one item on the to-do list, we want to read the next one. Joan Rosenberg wrote a book called 90 Seconds to a Life You Love. How to master your difficult feelings to cultivate lasting confidence, resilience, and authenticity. Now, she was talking about shifting our feelings in 90 seconds. Even when that feeling was strong, such as utter rage at your boss because of some decision that just didn't make sense to you. She says 90 seconds. We surely can take 90 seconds. You can even count that in your head if you have to. When I do it, it feels like an eternity. And yet, when it's done, there are no changes in my life, because even though I feel like I'm moving at 100 miles an hour, I'm in fact still sitting at my desk, and, at most a new email came in. Now, let's return to more normal upsets. Take a pause is always doable. Navy SEALs learn to box breathe, to breathe in to the count of 4, to hold to the count of 4, to breathe out to the count of 4, to wait to the count of 4, and then repeat the cycle. They learn to do that so well that it becomes automatic. It's a real practice. When they're about to assume a high-risk task, they know that they are preparing themselves to be at their best. If you add up the time, it's 16 seconds. Okay, 90 seconds is 5 times more, but it is still a very short time. The 90-second pause helps you overcome strong emotion. The other 16-second one brings your blood pressure down, lets your cortisol levels drop, and your mind to clear. We do have time. Years ago, there was a commercial from Coca-Cola. They called it the pause that refreshes. And you saw someone drinking a bottle of Coke. Now, the interesting thing is that pause was much longer than 90 seconds. Moreover, it was a pause that also served as a stimulant. Because Coke is full of caffeine, at least it was, what it does is it convinces you to do something you like to justify the pause. Deciding to take a pause is really the hard part, and yet it is the easiest of what we have to do to maintain mental wellness in the moment. Because the next key is practice, which means you have to remember that this is an effective strategy to both calm and center yourself, to give your brain the opportunity to make the connections it needs to respond to the moment in a better informed way. Now, remembering something in the midst of racing through the day is sometimes hard. Then again, we have phones where we can set a timer so that it rings when the action must take place, or a notification pops up on our screens. The aspect of remembering to practice is still present, and it takes effort to do this. But the final key is patience. There's one that's actually the hardest thing for us to do, especially when our life is rushing so fast. Do you remember the joke, "God, please give me patience and give it to me right now"? We need to be patient with ourselves. Patient when we didn't practice taking a pause when it was really important, say at the morning status meeting. We need to be patient with ourselves and remind ourselves that, okay, now at least I remember the key after the fact. Maybe in the future I'll remember it as I'm in the conversation, and just maybe in the future I'll remember to take the pause before the moment. The pause is the action. It requires a decision, and I'm sorry, but making a decision is an action. Practice is the structure. It's attained through repetition. Patience provides the energy. When we don't use our energy chastising ourselves, we use that energy to fuel the next opportunity to pause and recalibrate where we are. 3 keys: pause, practice, patience. I want to thank you for joining me today. I hope this conversation has offered not just new ideas, but a different way of noticing how we can prepare ourselves for the unexpected and thus even the expected. If you're on YouTube, I'm going to ask you to click the like button. Yes, it's very important to me to build this show, to build the audience, but it's also important to those people who are trying to find this kind of information. I'm Madeline Blair, wishing you infinite possibilities as you unlock your resilient leader.